What is going on, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Time Killers podcast. My name is Neil Rivera, and I'm once again joined by Mr. Matthew Field. What is going on, Matthew?
Just hanging out in the underground city of Speranza.
Oh man, I knew you would start off that way, and I know that that's an Arc Raiders reference. And guys, let me just tell you, I'm real excited to talk to you guys about Arc Raiders. I thought that was going to be a one-man segment when Matthew and I were planning this show, and I've been playing quite a bit of it. So yeah, we're glad that you're here with us, and we're going to be talking about Arc Raiders. But before we talk about that, Matthew and I have also been playing The Outer Worlds 2, the latest from Obsidian Entertainment and Microsoft, or Xbox Publishing, I guess is what they're called now. And so, yeah, this is obviously the sequel to The Outer Worlds that launched on Game Pass for Xbox. And yeah, it's out, it's here. And it's, I mean, I think a big note is that this marks the third like full release. I shouldn't say full release, but it's the third video game launched in 2025 for Obsidian, which is kind of insane when you think about it. Between Avowed, right? You've got Avowed, you've got Grounded 2, which launched in early access earlier this summer, and then now The Outer Worlds 2. That kind of feeds into my thoughts about The Outer Worlds 2. But before we jump into that, Matthew, where are you at? I guess how long have you been playing Outer Worlds 2? What's your history with the first one, and then how are you feeling about Outer Worlds 2 so far?
So I've played about 17 or 18 hours of Outer Worlds 2. I'm sort of in the second major area, which I think I read there's 4 major areas, so I'm guessing I'm approaching halfway or somewhere around there. Mm-hmm. Regarding my experience with the first game, I kind of played about this much of the first game, maybe 15 hours or so. I don't really remember, to be honest, that much about what where I was in the narrative or anything. Because I wasn't really a huge fan of the first game. It kind of fell flat for me a little bit. And I ended up bouncing off of it. And so my experience so far with Outer Worlds 2 has been a bit better. It's really hard for me to, you mentioned these other Obsidian games that have come out this year, and it's really hard for me to not compare this, especially to Avowed. And I'm so far at this point, I would say I'm not liking it as much as Avowed, and we can get into why. But I mean, I think it's competently made. It's it feels like an Obsidian game. And yeah, like I think the whole vibe and the art that they go for in some of these locations is really nice so far. Yeah, no, I'm glad you sort of set the scene with like your history with it, because I kind of have the exact opposite story as you, where like I played through the first one, loved the first one. I don't remember much about the story, but it is a game that I think at this point we can say that it's a series that I think exists on the strength of its vibe. Like it really, this is a world that, like, between the art direction and just the writing and just sort of like the how they've sort of set up the main factions in both of these games, they've really sort of set up like this really interesting universe. But I do agree that between the first one and this one and what I've played of it so far, it hasn't quite hit its full potential, at least what I've seen of like the setting in the universe. It does fall a little flat at times. And I mean, truthfully, and Matthew, I know, like, I'm going to disclose this for everybody, but Matthew, you're a Microsoft employee, so you can't really speak on this 100%, but I do think some of this is weird in light of the year that Microsoft and Xbox are having, because like a lot of this just like anti-corporate, and like, there's this line in the opening sequence
sequence where, it talks about like the Earth Protectorate and like kind of what they do. And it's like they fight tyrannical governments and corrupt government or corrupt corporations and corrupt corporations in league with, corrupt governments. And it all just kind of hits a little too close on the head. And like, it doesn't really say enough through the writing. Like, it doesn't have enough to say through the writing to like really take advantage of it. And it's sort of like, to speak to that, Matthew, like it does fall a little flat in some regards.
Yeah. And I mean, even in universe, and I sort of felt this way about the first game. And granted, I didn't see the first one to completion. I haven't finished this one, so I don't really know how it wraps up. But they have these big, they're making it very clear that this is what they're satirizing, right? And even setting aside, their ownership and all that, it's just not quite clear the stance that they're trying to take.
Yeah.
If they're even trying to take one here, right?
No.
Like they're not punching up or punching down. It's just like it's there, and they're making
it's
fun
all
of
set.
It, but
yeah, it's all set dressing, and it's just, yep, like you've got like the corporatists, you've got the fascists, and you've got these sort of like forward-thinking progressive groups, and like you're kind of free to do whatever with whomever, and we as the company, the people making this game aren't really nudging you in one way or the other. And like truthfully, like I think that like each of the factions in this game are unlikable, like in their own ways.
Right, and I agree. None of these factions like come across as like very positive so far in any way. But compare this to like Avowed, where you also play as a character who comes from an empire. Basically, you are the envoy for this like colonial like. You come from somebody who wants to make a colony of this place that you land.
Yeah,
on.
You're the colonizer.
Right, but it lets you go against that, or it lets you lean into that. Like it gives you very clear agency in which way you want to take that. And here, not only is it like not clear whether any of these sides are any good or anything, it's also so far not really let me take a stance in any direction other than just like, unless I wanted to be absolutely loyal to the people who sent us here, the Earth Directorate. So I'm not like, there's not been much agency compared to Avowed. I'm going to be comparing this thing to Avowed because it's just so recent in memory. But
and the games are so similar too. And I think when they launch so close together, I think that comparison's inevitable.
It is, yeah. I guess I don't know. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that, like, I mean, I'm glad that you have kind of invoked the Avowed comparison because, like, I do find myself going back and saying, like, no, I like the way that Avowed did this more. And I think, yeah, like, the agency thing is a really big part of that. And I think that's a good segue into the gameplay side of things, where like I kind of went out of my comfort zone in this, where I was like, okay, I'm going to play more of like a hacker tech focused character. And like, even from a player, like skill expression standpoint, like I think none of that stuff sort of carries through, right? Like I've specialized in guns, engineering, and hacking. And like the only thing I can really say for certain that engineering has given me is like the ability to open some doors that would otherwise be inaccessible to me. The same way that like there are certain doors that like you can lockpick and you need a lockpick skill. Like there hasn't really been any sort of tangible benefit to speccing the way that I have. I still feel like I'm running around with a gun and shooting dudes and leveling up, and it just kind of feels like I'm not really driving my character in any one particular direction.
Totally. I mean, a couple things here. I mean, one, like if there's a door that you can't get into because you can't pick it or whatever, like it seems like there's almost always another way that you can get in using some other skill. Or just like having better observation. Like there's one door in the starting area where like you can like socially navigate your way in for this person to tell you how to get in, or if you just like look around, you find it, and then if you end up like following through on the conversations, he just ends up telling you something that you already found on your own. So it's not taking like a clear stance, like, oh, this is a computer room. Like if you don't have hacking or whatever, you're not going to find anything that we hidden in there. It feels like they're really hedging their bets there, which I mean, I guess that's fine. But on the front that you're talking about with combat, I mean, I think that again, going back to the Avowed comparison, the Avowed had a much wider array of combat styles that you could employ with your character. Like think about all the different weapons. You could basically mix and match whichever main-handed, offhand sort of weapons or spell books that you wanted to. Here you're basically just got guns, and that's basically it. Like there's not
you're
really
rotating
much
through all the different ones. I mean, like I'm not really specializing in any sort of weapon. Like and like there is also an emphasis on crafting here in the same way that there is an emphasis on crafting in Avowed, in the same way that there's an emphasis on crafting in Grounded. A lot of these systems have sort of like carried over, and I think one of my main complaints now is that I think at this point, like it's all becoming a little bit homogenized. But I mean, yeah, going back to the combat, like I'm just kind of rotating through the guns that like I have the ammo for. So like, I don't feel like I'm particularly, specialized in one area. I mentioned that my character, I specialized in guns, but like there was one sequence where it just made more sense for me to smack dudes with this giant two-handed hammer that I got. And so like I was running around like, which was the exact way that I played the entirety of Avowed, and it felt the exact same way. So I think there is something, I think there's something about releasing and launching 3 games in a single year that, definitely is worth applauding. But I do think the way that Obsidian have gone about doing it, like it does seem like a lot of these systems have sort of crept in and sort of like, I do worry that there's a sense that like if they do this again, there's another wave of, Avowed 2, Outer Worlds 3, and Grounded 3. Like it's all going to be stale at that point.
I sort of agree. I mean, I agree that the gunplay here does not. I mean, the gunplay just doesn't feel good, right?
It's not good.
It's not great. The guns don't feel good to shoot, even if you're speccing into guns to be the gun guy. Like the guns just don't feel weighty. They don't feel good to shoot. But the other thing here is that it's not like, Avowed is its own thing, but this is the same way that it was in Outer Worlds 1 from what I recall. They just haven't, like, it's not like they gave people what they think they thought they wanted. It feels like they didn't iterate on it because they thought people liked the way that it was in the first. Even though I think if I seem to recall, like there being a good number of complaints about some of the combat in the first, and I don't really know how the reception has been for this one, the combat in this one, but it doesn't feel any better. Like, and sometimes like when you are using a gun, you don't, you've either spec'd into guns or you're too squishy to go into melee or whatever. Like the guys will just run at you anyway, and you don't really have a mechanism to like
the melee is just useless in this game.
Yeah, unless you're stealth, and they don't see you coming. But yeah, and so some of that just does not feel good. Like if you compare it to something like Fallout, which this very clearly takes a ton of inspiration from. There was even talk about like should this just have been a Fallout game, which is a whole other conversation. I would argue no, but like Fallout has VATS. Like you can pause it and like it becomes basically an RPG at that point in combat. And this doesn't have anything like that.
Yeah, I feel like this is trapped between wanting to be an RPG and wanting to be a shooter or more action oriented, like first person RPG. And it does neither of them particularly amazingly. Like I would say like we've been pretty negative about it, but I would say like this is a good solid game, right? Like I enjoyed Avowed, and I'm enjoying this about as much as I enjoyed Avowed, even though I would agree with you that ultimately I enjoyed Avowed more. But I mean,
Yeah.
I would say that, in terms of quality and like, how well they, run and play and like the story, the companions. I mean, that's another thing too, is that like the companion system, I think, is the one element here that kind of carried over from Avowed and the past Outer Worlds game, and I just feel like there's just been no improvement to it, and like I don't particularly enjoy having my companions with me. Like they're just kind of meat shields in regard. Like they don't really do much. Like they only have one ability apiece that has like a really lengthy cooldown, and so yeah, like it I don't know, but I'm kind of all over the place with this game, but like it is good. It is competent. I'm enjoying myself with it, but like, yeah, it just definitely, it doesn't feel like a game, like a big budget AAA game.
I would agree. And yeah, so I mean, even if you look at the companion combat, like compared to Avowed, you have some choice. I think they had at least 2 skills that you could use for each of them, and you could choose how, like you could choose which ones they deployed or whatever.
Yeah.
Here your each companion has one ability that has a long cooldown, and your only way to really customize them that I think that I've seen is where you can like choose whether their weapons and armor have different properties or something, which I haven't really, I mean, I guess like, for your starting companion, one can be electric or one is like corrosive or something. So I guess if you found a weakness to one of those and the enemies you're facing, it'd be better to switch it over to that. But I mean, it's very, very minor in the grand scheme of things. But I mean, to your point about this, like it is competently made. Like we have been talking very negative here because, of Obsidian's track record and how big of a release this is. We're being very particular, but I think a lot of these small things that we're talking about here would be very forgivable if the core story that was driving you forward was more compelling.
Yeah.
Like if I had a real motivation to get through to the next big story beat, I think a lot of this would be easily forgiven, especially in this kind of game, this kind of RPG where it is such an emphasis on the narrative and the characters in play here. And I have not felt that at this point. I've heard that there's like a big sort of like midway twist that kind of reframes some things and provides some momentum for the second half. I don't know what it is, but I can promise that I haven't hit it yet. I see the story's been really light.
Yeah, like they lay the groundwork for it, and like I think I'm a little bit more ahead of you, but like even if the twist plays out the way that I foresee it playing out, it wouldn't justify the first half of this game being so weak narratively. It is very much a standard revenge story without really much flavor to it, especially coming off of, Ghost of Yotei, which is a particularly powerful revenge story. This one didn't really have the same level of punch to it.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I guess you must be a little bit further on, but I mean, like, you get to the second planet, and I expect there's going to be some big things happening here narratively to kind of introduce you and get you involved in what's going on this new environment that you're dropping into, and it like literally the first thing that you're introduced to once you get to the first map marker on the second planet is like, oh, there's some refugees here, and they want to move into the zone that we're telling them that they can't, and you got to figure that out. Like, it's like it totally deflates the enthusiasm for like, any kind of big events happening. I think that the story has been weak, unfortunately, but hopefully that'll change as it goes on.
I mean, a good like way to sort of frame my feelings on this game is that like I consistently have been finding myself going back to not Avowed, not The Outer Worlds 1, but Borderlands 4, and I almost find myself wanting to play that more because like I feel like kind of going back to the more emphasis on like the shooter aspects, the more shooter mechanics, like Borderlands just does those better, and I think it's the open world and like the sort of lackluster story are more forgivable there because the moment to moment gameplay is so much more fun. And here, like, there isn't as much fun moment to moment gameplay or deep RPG progression or a compelling narrative. Like it's sort of striking out on all three fronts there, and it's just sort of competent across the board.
I agree. It's actually a game that I've thought about a lot while playing this as well, in a way that I definitely did not expect. I think it's primarily because they both, are parodies and satirizing a lot of stuff, where Borderlands is much more like tongue in cheek. Like there's very little serious about it. Like it does not try to be serious about it, like, 10% serious, whereas Outer Worlds is trying to be like maybe 40% serious. And I feel like that extra 30% is like dead weight. Like it is not doing the serious parts well. I think it either needs to have it needs to go one way or the other. It needs to kind of pick a lane a little bit for it to be more effective. Because again, when you start to, if you're not nailing like the big RPG, like progression systems, driven stuff, your guns don't feel good, especially when compared to something like Borderlands. You got to have the narrative. Like you said, they're kind of mid on all of the big things. Not bad, just like nothing that's truly excelling to set it apart from some of its peers.
Yeah. So, well, speaking of which, there is one element that we sort of didn't touch on, and that's the it's not the Hades is fresh on my mind, so I'm going to say the boon system, but it's the reverse boon system where it's like the sort of like you get the negative perks, and it's sort of based on how you play. I keep forgetting what the name of these are.
The flaws.
The flaws, thank you. I knew it was a very simple name for the mechanic, but yeah. So, I mean, have you experimented with these at all? Have you gotten a lot of them? How are you feeling about that in terms of, potential differentiators?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because I have totally screwed up my character by accepting a flaw that has like ruined my character progression, and maybe that's part of my problem here, to be honest. I took a flaw that basically, I think it's called easily distracted, where it basically means you have to spread out your stat points. You can't excel in anything, but you get extra stat points to allocate. So you have a high floor, but a low ceiling for your stats. They're all like squished together,
right?
Which is meant like, in practice, it's meant that I'm failing a lot of things or can't do a lot of things by like 1 point. Like I'm 1 point short, that I would otherwise have. I regret doing that. I've thought about, re-rolling, but it's too late at this point.
There's one, I don't know if it was this one specifically or if there was another one, because I do remember the name Easily Distracted, but there was one where it literally gave me a warning that's like, hey, like this will mess up your game and like it's not recommended for your first playthrough. And I was kind of like, why would
the Sticky Fingers one? I don't know if it was called Sticky Fingers, but it's like where you're always stealing stuff, and it was like you're gonna randomly steal things and you don't have any control over it. And if people say it, they're gonna still react.
There's an entirely different one that I got that gave me the same warning, and I can't remember what the effect was.
Oh, really?
Damn. Yeah, it was like, I mean, it might have been, it was something more similar to like the Easily Distracted perk, where it was more of a passive bonus, but it was like one of those where it's like, if you opt in, it's going to be a challenge for you, like in a progression sense.
Interesting.
But yeah,
maybe
like
it was the one that I picked and I just didn't see that warning.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like the ability to opt out sort of like neuters it. Like I understand why they wouldn't want to force stuff like that on you, but like I think that's the one sort of differentiating factor here, and like you can entirely opt out of it if you want to. So it kind of nets zero in my book in terms of like its impact on the game overall.
That's kind of why I picked this up. Like I wanted it to I think they're designed to put you out of your comfort zone a little bit, and I respect them for that. And that's kind of why I was like, okay, I'm going to try this one out. This one seems like it could be good. They're giving you extra skill points. You just can't dump points into one thing. And maybe a little bit further in, I won't have regretted doing it. Like once I start stacking up more points, but for the reasons we've already mentioned, like it seems like it's usually okay to just excel in a couple things. Like if you don't get everything with one stat that you like don't have, then you probably have another stat that you can get the same thing with. So
right.
In that regard, it feels like I'm out of luck.
Yeah. Do you see yourself rolling credits finishing this up, or do you see yourself dropping off?
You know, I can't say honestly. I think if I'm being honest with myself, I may drop it and come back for a DLC or something next year, because this does, unlike Avowed, this has planned DLC.
Okay.
Just like the first one did. So I could see myself dropping this for now, letting it get a couple patches, and coming back whenever the DLC package drops. And primarily the reason why I say that is because of the next game we're talking about, which we're going to get to.
Yeah, no, I mean, I envision myself rolling credits on this. I still have some momentum. Yeah, I do have some momentum still, but I think the more I dip my toes into Arc Raiders, the more that does start to pull me aside. One last thing I will say on the sort of the flaw system, I felt particularly incensed because once again, I will say the AI, the companion AI, particularly in this game, is just not good. Like they're just meat shields. They just die. I got a flaw offered to me that was like, yeah. I got a flaw that was offered to me that was like poor leadership, and it was given to me as a result of like my companions being downed consistently, and it was like the biggest slap in the face ever.
It did
so it's
what?
like stuff like
It was
like, I forget what like the effect was, but it was essentially, it was like it was a result of like my bad leadership, where it was like it was the flavor text around it was framed in such a way that it was like as a result of me getting my companions killed, so to speak. The effect was something to the effect of like, when they get downed, you can. I said no to it just because I was so upset with it. So like I read the flavor text was, I was just like, well, like make your AI smarter.
I think. I mean, would you say you said you think you're going to roll credits on it? Would you say that I need to push through to like whatever midway point that you seem to have hit before I make that call? Or do you think that if it's not going to change anything for me at this point?
I don't think it's going to change anything for you at this point. I think I'm just a little bit more like, I am enjoying the moment to moment, like, I guess, existing in the world, so to speak. I think the when I'm not in combat and I'm doing the more, like just having conversations with people and like getting the drip feed of the stories and like some of the different factions, I will say like the Order, which is the more like sort of like progressive, futuristic, like they're all very like they're big on like the equation and like what is it, like their religion is based in math essentially, and so like they're a very religious like presenting group, but everything is based like rooted in mathematics and science and like being able to prove logic one way or the other. And I thought the way that they're presented is super interesting. I mean, there's parts that I like, but yeah, I think the moment to moment I'm not enjoying it as much.
Yeah, I mean, stuff like that's the stuff that I play these games for, right? You got a weird faction that like believes something that's cool and sci-fi, and maybe I just need to get a little bit further in the main story. I felt like because I felt like I've needed to level up and do a bunch of side stuff to be able to progress, because I mean I found honestly the difficulty has been kind of it's been kind of tough for me. I don't know if it's just because of the way my character has been built. But,
no, it is very, very tough. And I was seeing some complaints in the subreddit as well. It's like, it seems like the first half is sort of like tuned to be a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, and it makes sense. I mean, Avowed was kind of that way too. I had the same experience there where early in that game, I was struggling a little bit, and then you hit a breakthrough point where your
they
build
want you
comes together.
crafting, they want you using items, they want you, you know, like that's the one thing I will give Obsidian credit for, like with their combat systems, is that they are very, like, they're streamlined, they're very console and controller friendly, like they're easy to pick up and play and learn and understand. And like I still think there are some things here about the combat that I enjoy. I just wish the guns were a little bit more, like they had a little bit more individuality, and like, you know, felt like I was making them more powerful. But totally. Yeah, I mean, like there's definitely things that I like, and I mean, I would say for you, like I wouldn't feel like there's a huge, like, I'm not getting enough from the story to like feel like there's enough to recommend, like, yes, push through, because the moment to moment stuff can be a little bit hit or miss. But yeah, I mean, I'm gonna keep chugging and see if I can finish credits. But when we come back from our break, we're gonna talk about the game that might rip me away from the Outer Worlds 2, and that is Arc Raiders. Hang on, we'll be right back. And we are back. Matthew, tell me about Arc Raiders. Just let's I mean, let me not bury the lead here, because this is arguably the most popular game on the planet right now that's not named like Fortnite and GTA or whatever. So this is Embark Studios. This is the group that gave us the finals. This is them jumping into the extraction shooter genre. And so what I've been reading and seeing is that it's essentially the most casual, like it's Tarkov for, working dads, or like, you know, like people who have jobs essentially. And so this game wasn't like, it looked cool, but it wasn't on my radar like at all. But somehow I'm in and playing this thing. Matthew, tell me about, you know, Arc Raiders from your perspective.
Yeah, I think so. This it's had a couple of betas or like early previews. For the few people out there who haven't touched this game or have watched some people play this game, we'll give you some backstory here. It has been, it was announced a while ago. It's been, you know, teased in a couple of gameplay trailers. And at first, I think they didn't announce that it was going to be an extraction shooter. And when they announced that it was kind of raised some eyebrows. And then earlier this year, they had their first kind of public playtest at the same time as Marathon. And I played the Marathon playtest. I did not play the Arc Raiders playtest, but the Arc Raiders playtest was a lot better received than the Marathon one. And it followed up by a couple other play tests over the summer and fall, and here we are. It is
real quick. What is an extraction shooter for those of you, the people, you know, those of us at home who maybe don't know, those of us who do have jobs and haven't been able to get full-time employment playing Tarkov.
Yeah, so I mean, Escape from Tarkov is the most well-known one. It is a PvPvE multiplayer game where you spawn into a map as you would similar to like a PUBG or something, where there's also AI-controlled enemies, and you are basically trying to gather loot and extract gear and equipment, either that you steal from other players or that you like find that is like within the environment itself.
Yeah, and like that's what's so interesting about it, is that like it's not about necessarily killing the other players. It's about dropping, getting what you need, and getting out. And sometimes that takes the form of, I'm gonna see if I can, you know, rob somebody or betray somebody, whatever. or it is just like, yeah, let me go and like scavenge in this like abandoned warehouse and like sneak out.
And I think that balance there, that balance that you describe between like, are you going to PvP? Like, are you going to fight other players, or are you going to try to cooperate? That balance is the secret sauce of the extraction genre, in my opinion. Like, if to have a successful extraction game, you have to nail that dichotomy of whether you're going to work together, whether you're going to betray the other person, or are you just going to go in guns blazing. That sort of like social dynamic is absolutely key here. And I don't have a ton of experience in this genre, but I've never seen another extraction shooter nail it as well as Arc Raiders does.
So what does Arc Raiders nail in your mind that like sets it apart from Tarkov? And I mean, based on what you've played and seen from Marathon even.
So we'll start with the Tarkov one, the game that I have like less experience with. Tarkov was rough. I actually have not really followed Tarkov much since it was in alpha. I think it actually saw full release earlier this year. It was just in a really rough state initially, which gave it with that kind of hardcore. It was only one for people in the hardcore crowd. Where, because the inherent nature of an extraction shooter is that you can lose all the gear that you go in with. You're right, like
right.
You can lose everything. And having that kind of fall off.
There's a big risk reward in terms of like, planning. Like, do you want to go into a run like kitted out and like ready to go to fight something? You better be prepared to lose all of it in that case. Or do you want to go in, sort of light and, low risk but high reward, potentially high reward ceiling?
And I would say that's the second core pillar of an extraction shooter, is that decision on what kind of run that you want to have. Having a plan going into your run, because you have to make the reward worth the risk, right? Like, there's got to be something for you to get that's worth risking what you have versus just going in with a blank loadout, essentially. And I think from what I've played so far, Arc Raiders, it does the first thing better, the social aspect better, but it also seems to do the risk reward thing pretty well too.
Yeah, so I mean that gives us a good sort of like segue into like the inventory system, which is kind of the reward in all of this, right? So I mean, like, describe in a nutshell, like, what are you going out and finding? Like, what is the purpose? Like, why are you going out into this world and like dealing with the arcs and like other players?
Yeah, I think it's worth setting the stage here and like talking about the world, which is surprisingly good in a way that I like didn't really expect.
Yeah.
This is like a sort of Horizon Zero Dawn adjacent world where the surface of the planet has been taken over by robots. Like, humans lost the war against robots, and humans fled underground. And there's underground cities. The one you're in is Speranza. And then Arc are the robots that live up on the surface, and Raiders are the humans that return to the surface for a limited period of time to gather scraps of materials to take back underground for you to be able to survive. And so to your question, like, the stuff that you're gathering is mostly crafting materials, like stuff for weapons, ammo. There's also like plants, like you can harvest plants and get like seeds and food and
it's
stuff
all
too.
Very mundane stuff. It's like, rubber tubing and, fabric and, like, it's all pieces of materials that, the idea is that you're crafting these things together into greater, bigger items.
Right. Very rarely are you finding something that like on its own is impressive, cool, right? Like, everything that you're getting, you're only excited about because of the promise of what that means for you later, which I think is an important thing, because if you didn't care about this stuff, or if it wasn't worth going in for, then what are we even doing here, right? Like, it gives you a reason to gather stuff beyond beyond just worrying about like, okay, does this person have a better gun? Can I kill them and take their purple gun or whatever? You know, there's a lot of other objectives for you to accomplish on the map other than the PvP ones.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have like a Tarkov or Marathon even to like compare it to, but I mean, like the inventory system, at first glance, and I think when you're first sort of like interacting with it, it can be a little overwhelming of like, okay, what do I need to keep? What do I need to salvage? What do I need to sell? And I think the more you just sort of jump in and do more runs and just start like unlocking stuff, the more it starts to like coalesce. And like I 100% think that this is going to be a game that drives me to find a spreadsheet or build a spreadsheet or whatever, manage a spreadsheet in order to figure out like, okay, what items do I need for what, and because like that's also another sort of balancing act that you're doing in between the runs of like, okay, well, I just went in here and like sacrificed or like risked my neck for this like rubber tubing. Like, do I need it for this item, or do I want to salvage it for these parts that I can use to craft for more ammo or something else? Like, there's a lot of decisions that you're making, even in just the menus of this game.
Yeah, because it does not always clear. Like I ended up, to your point, I ended up salvaging a bunch of stuff initially that I later found I could, rather than just scrapping it. Because it tells you, oh, this could be salvaged for, whatever, and you can salvage it and get those core components. But it isn't always clear whether the stuff that you actually have, the actual higher level object, before you deconstruct it, is actually used for a recipe or something. And I think I can't decide whether I like that lack of transparency or not. It definitely adds a learning curve to it. I will say that for sure. Because you're dealing with limited inventory anyway. You can't just save everything. So, especially early on before you expand your stash. So, I think people will.
It's intentionally obtuse. It's intentionally obtuse in a way that makes it like a little bit more inaccessible for like a newer person to come in and like feel like they're doing stuff. But the more, like I said, the more I interact with it, and the more the more I familiarize myself with what there is to sort of like upgrade and like the different upgrade paths, I find myself being a little bit more strategic in how I manage my inventory. So, I'm learning and I'm enjoying the game. It's just, it's still, I mean, if you're jumping into this expecting like, let me just jump in for this round and jump in for another round, like this is definitely not that. There's definitely a lot more management and maintenance, both in between rounds. And we haven't really talked much about like the experience being in, I guess on the surface. It's pretty stressful, Matthew.
It is, and it's stressful in a way that is difficult to convey without experiencing. I'd watched a ton of streams of this game before buying it and trying it out myself, and the stress and like the intensity and like how aware you have to be of everything going on around you is you just don't capture that when you're watching somebody else play.
Yeah, I was gonna say this game is like I dare say it's like it's boring on a stream. Like you're just watching a dude run around loot, but like you are constantly like on edge, on alert, like having to, because like at any given moment anything could happen. I mean, like the PUBG comparison you made earlier, like I know these games kind of share a lot in their DNA, but like I constantly, like, this is an experience that reminds me so much of like those early days of PUBG, of just not knowing what's going to be over that hill and not knowing what's going to be on the other side of this door when you open. Is there, like, oh man, someone's looted here, like, what does that mean? And hearing gunshots off in the distance or seeing a plume of smoke, and like there's so much visual storytelling that's going on, like both through just the visuals, but then obviously like the gunshots, and the audio design is so good.
In the like, best way. Like you drop into a map, right? You start on somewhere like innocuous. You may run around, you may, get your early little bits of gear that you find in whatever crates are around you. Then as you know, a couple minutes in, you may start hearing like some gunfire off in the distance. You know, you're like, okay, well, are those humans facing each other, or are they humans facing robots? Or are those robots shooting humans that aren't shooting back? Like, what's going on there? Then you may proceed. You may find some areas that have already been looted. It's like, okay, well, is the person that looted this still around here? I didn't see anybody. Like, are they hiding, waiting to ambush me? Then you may start to hear like explosions and gunfire, or like flares being shot off, or you know, drops coming in from orbit, landing somewhere on the map. Like there's these constant stream of like sensory inputs to keep you engaged and like considering your options and your surroundings on the map. It's a really, I mean, it's just
different exits have different like timers that like they're closing permanently. So I mean, like you could drop in and like the nearest exit to you could be closing like immediately, and like you need to make a decision of like, okay, do I need to get in, get out, or do I want to risk, you know, having to travel further across the map? And like there's, you know, it goes back to what I was saying earlier, like there's just all these little decisions they have to make, but it speaks to what you're saying, Matthew, of like all these, there's just always these little mini events, these micro events happening, and there's all these different little interactions that are happening in the world that are like constantly making you think like, you know, yeah, is that the, you know, AI fighting a human? Are those humans fighting each other? Do I need to, you know, escape? Do I need to change my plan, my course of action, whatever? Like you're constantly on your toes, and it's an experience that I haven't experienced in a game in a long time.
Totally. And you know, at least as much as I've played, which, you know, isn't that much. I've only, compared to how many hours some people have sunk in, I'm it's comparatively little, but I've played, you know, maybe 8 hours or so. It hasn't gotten old, like it's not gotten stale in any way. Like I've only dropped into 3 different maps, but the maps are so big, you know, you can basically explore a new part of every map, like, and every drop. And even if you do go to one of the places that you've been to before, you're like, oh, I know this area. Like I know what I can do here or whatever, but it may end up being different. Like the loot that you looted last time is going to be different. There may be different enemies there. There may have been other people that came there before you that are different than last time. Like it's just, there's a lot of different, it feels like it's made to create unique stories, because you're never going to play the same round twice, you know?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, I think the you know, the enemy AI is really intelligent in how aggressive they are and how they follow you. And I mean, like it really helps instill this sense of fear and like makes them this really fearsome, you know, like foe. And it really, you know, sets the tempo and the stage for, you know, how careful you need to be. And then, you know, that's not even to account for other players who you may not be able to trust. Luckily in my case, you know, as a solo player, I think, you know, most of the solo community has been pretty good and not betraying, you know, each other and shooting each other. They've all been pretty cooperative and helpful and working together. I did have my first experience earlier today where somebody pulled the trigger on me while we were trying to extract and robbed me. So that sucked. Oh. But, you know, it really, you know, it's one of those things where it's like, I can't be mad at it, because, you know, that's part of the experience, is just not knowing what to expect each round.
It's just a fascinating like social experience, or experiment, I should say. I mean, you never know. It's just there's like, yeah, like you said, like you can never truly trust anybody. Like there's a lot of times, you know, I've had very few PvP encounters, but you never know, right? Like anybody can just shoot at you at any time. And then, you know, of course, like there are times where somebody you'll just start getting like shot from the distance with no notice or whatever. You're like,
yeah.
Okay, like I don't know where I'm getting sniped from somewhere. Like I gotta leave.
Is it a person? Is it a bot? What is it?
Yeah. And what's extra interesting is that if maybe you are like friendly with one other person, because it's got proximity chat, you know, you can say hey to the people that are right next to you. Maybe you've been like friendly with this person. You guys have been going around and shooting arcs or whatever, but then a third person comes in and maybe he's hostile, or maybe he looks like he's going to be hostile, or you found a body near him and you think he like maybe took that person out. Then that also changes the dynamic between you and the person who you were with, right? Because if two people start shooting each other, the trust you had with the other person up to that point is lost, right? Like I mean, there's such an unpredictable nature to it. And it's just so interesting. And with the amount of people online playing, you get a ton of different like people, like different play styles to interact and see. So it's definitely a game
really, that you can't you can't describe it like via podcast. Like it's one of those games that you have to get in and play and like really feel this stuff, because like on its surface, it really does just look like, yep, you're walking around and like looting drawers for like, you know, weird supplies. But like when you know all of the different things that could possibly happen to you at any time, at any given moment, like it makes every moment tense.
Yeah. And like, I mean, even when you loot things, and this is a standard like extraction shooter thing, but when you loot things, you don't see all the items in there immediately. Like they appear over time. And so it's kind of like waiting for like a dice roll to finish or something. Like there's a little bit of anticipation there.
Well, it emulates, you know, like the idea of like searching a drawer too.
Exactly. Yeah. But like if there's something extra good in there, it's like a purple item, you get the little audio cue and it's like, and you're like, oh,
yep.
Yes. It's just like a perfect
satisfying
little touch. Yeah. Yeah. All the little touches like that are really good. What I do want to say, I want to pivot here for a minute. The other extraction shooter that historically has been pretty well liked is the Dark Zone, that was DLC for the original Division game, like in 2016 or something like that.
Some would say it was the godfather of the extraction shooter genre now.
I mean, I think Tarkov came out about the same time. I don't know who had the idea first, but yes, I think it's fair to say that the Dark Zone was like the first to really do it well. I thought the Dark Zone was a great idea, but because of its DLC nature, it wasn't quite as fleshed out as something like this is. But I did like the aspect of the Dark or of the Division's implementation, is that the stuff you got in the Dark Zone you could then just use in the PvE portion of the game, right? Like there was other places you could take it where you weren't at risk of losing it, which was cool.
Yeah.
Which obviously is not the case here. So I mean, this is a little bit more hardcore than the Dark Zone was. And then we get to Marathon, which is kind of the elephant in the room here.
Yeah.
It's
yeah. So as of this recording, just adding, extra flavor here. Arc Raiders has sold 4 million copies, and I think on the same day that they reported that, there was also a report that I believe Eurogamer put out saying that Sony or PlayStation isn't happy with the returns that it's seeing on Bungie 2 since the acquisition. So all this to say that there's a lot of pressure on Marathon still, especially in the light of Arc Raiders being so successful.
Yeah. I already had some concerns, and I think we recorded a podcast earlier this year where you can listen to us talk about Marathon a little bit. I think this makes it very tough for Marathon here and Bungie. So all the stuff we just talked about, like with the excellent social dynamics, the risk versus reward, the impactful like decisions that you're making during each round. Even some of, like, we didn't talk about this, but like you have quests that people send you out to do in the world, that kind of like guide you to certain areas on the map or certain behaviors that you can interact with. Marathon doesn't really have any of that. And I've spent a lot of time trying to pin down why, like, Marathon, it's the same idea, right? Like you don't have to like be enemies with anybody else. Like you can all go around looting stuff on your own and team up the same way that you can in Arc Raiders. Like that capability is there. But something, and I really think it comes down to the first person nature of it, and the fact that you are required to drop in with a group of 3, that really makes it so that you are always adversarial to anybody that you face. It is a PvP first game, period. And again, there's still time to change before launch, but in the version that I played it back in the spring, that is the way that it is. It is, you play it to fight other players alongside your teammates. The abilities and skills that you have are like as the different classes that you choose, which is another departure from this kind of game. You know, in Arc Raiders, everybody's basically the same, whereas Marathon is class based. Most of your abilities are you're choosing those. They're only effective against other players in general. So it really all like points towards more player versus player combat. And I don't think, I think Arc Raiders, I can't imagine wanting to, I don't know who Marathon is for. If it's not for the person, for the diehard like Destiny player who wants a PvP game, you'd have to be somebody who bounced off of Arc Raiders because there's not enough PvP or something like that. Like I think there's something really important, like critical about Arc Raiders. Everyone is the same class. Everyone has access to the same weapons. Like, I think that part in an extraction shooter is critical. So I feel like that's a big hurdle for them to overcome, because then not only do you have to worry about just the overall difficulty tuning of it all, and like, you know, how does the progression feel and all that, but like, you also have to layer on like tuning and making sure that the classes are, you know, balanced. And like, you know, if Destiny shows us anything, is that like there are seasons where things shift, and so I think it just adds too many variables in a genre where like you need a lot to go right for it to be fun. And I think Arc Raiders is doing all of those things right, from just the way that you're crafting the weapons to the way that, you know, the game plays. Like it plays very much like a video game, and I think the leveling system, like it's smart in a way that like it's not going to make you feel overpowered in any one regard, right? Like, I think it plays well. It's designed to make everyone like, you know, feel like they're playing on a level playing field. And then going back to the quest system, I think the quest system is the secret sauce, because it gets you out into the world in a non-adversarial way, looking out and interacting with the world in ways that you probably wouldn't otherwise if you were just trying to kill people. So I think that, you know, hearing what you're saying about Marathon makes me think that, yeah, it's probably DOA at this point. I mean, and what you're saying about Arc Raiders is true, right? Because it almost feels more like a shooter MMO that you're on a PvP server for than it does like a Halo game or something, you know?
Exactly.
Like you can certainly drop into a match and only go for PvP stuff, but the majority of the time that's not there. And crucially, players who don't want to PvP or just like aren't good or aren't interested in that sort of thing, like, you can mostly avoid it. Like, you can't completely avoid it, but you can by making a decision to intentionally not get into gunfights with other players, most of the time you can avoid it and still have fun enjoying the other parts of the game.
Yeah, and quote unquote win, because like, even, you know, like I'll throw in like PUBG in there too. Like, you know, eventually you're gonna have to fight someone, right? Like, that's even in a battle royale game, like you're gonna have to fight someone. But like, yeah, this is very much a game where like you could go entire rounds without seeing another person, and you're just out there doing your own thing. And yeah, it very much does feel like there's so many elements that make it feel like they took the good parts of like a mobile RPG without all the, you know, really scummy monetization, and then they blended it with really good shooting and just this really cool, visually distinct world. and like the maps are all great. Yeah, I mean, I can't say enough good things about this game. I've only played about 8 hours of it or so jury's out on how much I will, like how much juice I'll get out of this, but it definitely is one that I'm going to be playing, throughout the year, and it's one that I find myself thinking about, in between rounds, quite a bit.
Definitely. I mean, it's because it's got that one more round type like feeling to it. Like whether you won or lost your previous round, like there's a really good like loop where, okay, in between you look at what you got, or maybe, you look at your empty inventory where you lost everything, and you're either crafting your new build or just moving stuff out of your inventory and evaluating what you're going to do in your next run. And then you get out there and it's like, you're back in it, and the rounds aren't that long.
No,
I will say,
I was really impressed with how short and like streamlined everything felt. Even the maps, like, we mentioned about how big the maps are. Like, they're not as big as something like, Fortnite or a PUBG map. And like, it's very easy. They're very easy to learn, where things are, where to go. Like, I was very impressed at how quickly I was able to sort of pick up and understand like where what my options were and where I could go, depending on where I spawn.
Yes, they're big enough to where you're not like constantly butting up against other players, but they're small enough to where you can certainly make it across the map, like within the time that you're given.
Yeah.
I will say, if I was going to have one knock against the length of rounds, it's that you can sometimes spawn into games that have already started. So like, like you mentioned earlier, some of your exits will close before the end of the round. And then at the very, like all the way up until the very end of the round, where there's only one spot you can extract on the map. So like you can get into a map where like some of those extraction options are already eliminated, or most of the crates and areas around where you spawn into have already been like looted or something.
Right.
Which it's a minor thing, but it makes some rounds feel like, okay, well this one, like, I had 10 less minutes in this round. The areas I was spawned into had already been picked over. And you end up not feeling like you can accomplish that much in that round, as you normally would. Small complaint, but it's something that I've noticed. Yeah,
there are some where it feels like there's some wasted rounds where you do spawn in like halfway, and it's akin to like spawning in a Halo game where like the other team is like got like a double-digit lead on you already, where it's like, well, let me just get what I can get here and get out before and like on to the next one. But to like what we were saying earlier is like you're so in and out. Like it's so easy to jump back into another round, and like the queue times are really, really short. Another thing we haven't really touched on is that like the game is running well, and like there's no, like the servers aren't crapping out, like people aren't like, I've never dropped connection. So like, from a network stability standpoint, it seems to be running really well, which is rare in an online shooter, especially one of this size.
Yeah, I think the early like pre-release, windows that they did seem to have paid off. I know the last one was considered like a server slam where they were trying to, test the server capacity. So yeah, that seems to have all paid off really well, because I the same as you, I haven't lagged once. I've seen no performance issues at all.
Well, that's Arc Raiders, everyone. I'm very interested to see where it nets out, come top 10 season. I feel like it's going to be on a lot of like the gaming pundits and talking heads. I think it's going to make a lot of top 10s this year. It'll be interesting to see how much I stick with it and whether or not it'll end up there. But I'm definitely enjoying my time with it so far. But that's going to do it for our show tonight, guys. We appreciate y'all hanging with us and listening to us talk about video games. If you haven't already, please subscribe to us on whatever podcast service that you're listening to us on. If you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe to us on YouTube. Don't forget that you can watch previous episodes and find all of our social handles at timekillerspod.com. And that's it. That's all I got to say for you guys. Matthew, anything to say to the nice people before we go?
If I see you out there on the surface, I'm friendly.
Yeah. Keep it chill, but also it's on site if you pop off on me. So I'm just letting you know. You get one shot with me, and that's it. You better not miss.
Yep.
But other than that, guys, we love you, and we'll see you on the next one.